Good morning. It really is a good morning, though, right? Because we're all here, and we're all in our bodies, and we're all breathing and blinking and probably digesting. And those are some of my favorite things to do. But we're not here to talk about doings, right? In fact, if you were here last week, you discovered that many of the ways that we describe ourselves are in terms of things that we do or have done. Or to say it a different way, we discovered that the ways that we've been describing ourselves consisted of stories and beliefs. And if you've done your homework, and I know you have, right? You've probably discovered that short of describing yourself through various spiritual or scientific constructs of thinking, it's rather difficult to write down who you actually are. I heard one person describe themselves as a point of consciousness in a field of energy. And this is both scientific and spiritual, and it sounds really, really intelligent, and I love that. But what does that mean? Like in terms of experience. Yes, we can speak in philosophical circles all day long, but will any of it really resonate with our sense of who we are? Because there's a difference between identifying with an idea and connecting with an abstract truth in a way which feels real. And that's what I've been trying to do here. Although, since I haven't given you the grand reveal, you have perhaps not gotten there. And that's okay. We've been talking about mirages and how the mirage appears to be the same to all who view it, but only the individual viewing it can assign meaning to it. That meaning is 99.0009% of the time an illusion, a construct of our thinking. And with this in mind, don't you wonder what the grand reveal is, right? You have 7 whole days before I tell you, and this is a spoiler alert, it probably won't surprise you to hear that I may very well speak words that you've heard me say before next week. You've heard me say many times, in fact. It is my hope, however, that assuming you've done some of your assignments so that you can see clearly, and you have, you'll be able to connect your actual experience with the words you hear the next time you hear them. You will feel the truth in them. And that is the funny thing about faith. So much of it is abstract, or promises based on abstract ideas, or threats made about abstract ideas, or any number of other perspectives on abstract ideas. I see that. Those are some of the very observations which placed me on this particular teaching path. I wanted to know it for real. I wanted to turn the abstract into reality, and for me, I have. Every week that I stand up here and I talk, or I sit with you in classes, or even in intimate conversations, I seek to give you the same gift. Try as I might, I cannot make you want it, though. I can give you the tools, like these silly homework assignments, which, again, I know you have done, but I cannot make you use them. No matter how much happier and more peaceful and joyful and abundant I know your lives will be if you do, no matter how much I know your life will change if you do. And on that note, in case you forgot what the homework was, I am listing it on the screen. Take pictures if you want, in case you want to give the assignment to somebody else, because as I've said, you've all done your homework, right? Did I say that you've done all your homework too many times? Probably. And was it annoying? No? Oh, you lie, girl, you lie. Yeah, probably. But you see, discomfort is memorable. Did I make the point that you have an opportunity to make a major shift by participating? That is the takeaway. Last week, I asked you something new. What moves you? What motivates or inspires you? What makes your heart swell? In case somebody is struggling with finding their inspiration, can anyone share something that moves them? It can be anything. Music. What else? Family. What else? Mountains. Laughter. Anybody else? What did you say? Sunrises and sunsets, desire, friends. Aren't those all beautiful things? And you will find that they all have something in common. I want people to get a sense of how someone else interprets my questions. Okay? All of those answers are correct, and all of them speak to that aforementioned grand reveal. And today we begin to explore our relationship with that which moves us to tears or joy or peace or action. And I want to do that by, predictably, telling a story. I do that, okay? So on the summit of Mauna Kea stood a telescope built to look through the universe. For 30 years, Elias Christos used it to look past the universe. He lived alone in the observatory full time. He breathed the thin air and he ate his meals mechanically with no concern for enjoyment. The world below him began to feel like a distant rumor. He missed his daughter's wedding. He forgot the sound of his wife's laughter. Friendships withered into unanswered messages. He told himself these were necessary sacrifices. Human relationships were messy and fleeting and flawed, and what he sought was pure, cosmic singularity. A theoretical baseline frequency that, once captured, would give him the unified equation for all existence. Absolute knowledge, unshakable perfection. To him, it was the ultimate gain. And one unusually cold Tuesday morning on the island, the sensors finally sang, and a golden line spiked across the monitors. The baseline was mapping itself. Elias's hand shook as he locked the coordinates. Data began flooding into the primary data arrays. 30 years of solitary work were about to pay off. He felt the swell of triumph. He had bypassed the chaotic illusion of ordinary life, and he had touched the blueprint of reality. He drew in a deep breath, ready to finally cry out, "Eureka!" the way that he'd imagined he would thousands of times throughout the years. But a high-pitched alarm cut through the silence. The cooling system had failed, and the supercomputers overheated. Elias typed frantically, trying to override the shutdowns, but the system froze. Through the dome glass, he saw black smoke pouring from the server shed outside. He grabbed a fire extinguisher and he ran, and when he forced the shed door open, a wall of heat shoved him backward. The racks that held the downloaded data were already melting into plastic sludge. Screens flickered and died. The golden line vanished. In less than a minute, the singular monument of his life was gone. His vision, his purpose, lost. Elias dropped the extinguisher and it hit the gravel with a dull thud. He fell to his knees on the cold ground, chest heaving. The ultimate knowledge had evaporated. He was left with nothing but a purposeless building on a mountain and the weight of everything he had given away to reach the summit. He closed his eyes, waiting for despair to crush him. But it did not come. His breath caught. Why did he not feel as destroyed as his goal? Why did he not feel himself melting into grief the way that his precious data had melted into abstract shape and chemical haze? It was then that he realized the silence was not empty. It was alive. He opened his eyes cautiously and his breath began to tremble because he was not staring at a glowing monitor for the first time in decades. He actually saw. The sun was just breaking over the ridge. Early light caught the frost on every pine needle and turned the forest into a lattice of diamonds. A hawk rode an invisible thermal, wings perfectly balanced. The air tasted of pine and recent rain, clean and real. And beneath his knees, the gravel shifted with a quiet crunch. Somewhere far below, a river murmured, and inside his own chest, somehow still, steady, and miraculous, his heart kept time. The perfection that he had spent 30 years calculating in cold numbers had been surrounding the observatory the entire time. The beauty inherent in the cosmos had waited patiently just outside the window while he stared into the dark, chasing an abstract image of absolute truth. Elias stood slowly. He did not look back at the ruined servers. He did not look up at the telescope. He turned his face toward the rising sun and began the long walk down the mountain trail toward home. What he discovered on that walk was not a new equation. It was simpler, but it was far more costly in the most wonderful way. He discovered that the only truth large enough to hold the universe is the one that moves through a living heart. That the highest calling is not to possess the final answer, but to live as love itself. Constantly, maybe quietly, and not keeping score. That when we stop placing such importance on gain, on being the one who finally figures it all out, love becomes plainly simple to demonstrate, and that this simplicity is the only perfection that never melts. It never evaporates. It never leaves us kneeling in the cold with empty hands. How many times have we sold perfection for a dream? How many times have we said, it'll all be worth it when? Meanwhile, perfection met us in between every blink, inside every breath, and we failed to see while we focused on some achievement. There is a beautiful philosophy in southern Africa known as Ubuntu. It is often translated as I am because we are. A person becomes fully human only through other persons. My humanity is bound in yours. When I diminish you, I diminish myself. When I lift you, I rise. Ubuntu does not say first we have to reach perfection or finally understand what this unified equation means or solve the cosmic singularity before we're allowed to love. What it says is actually the exact opposite. It says that the living of love is the recognition of who we already are. Elias walked down that mountain having lost the one thing he thought would complete him, and what remained was that simple and profound possibility of turning toward the people that he had left behind and meeting them without keeping score, and with the faith that they will receive him with that same openness. That is Ubuntu. That is the mirage cleared of its attachment story. The shared vision that we can all see clearly is this, that we are all here. We're all breathing and blinking and capable of love. Everything else that we pile on top of that demand to be perfect before we give or receive it, that we be worthy before we give or receive love, that the other person first change before we give love, all of that is the illusion that we've been free to set down all along. So here's your homework this week. This is your last moment to pick up the tools that I offer you before our transformative exercise next Sunday for our final talk in this series. You already know what moves you, what inspires you, and what drives you. You already feel all the places where love wants to move through you. So this week, I want you to practice Ubuntu in its simplest form. I want you to choose one person each day, beginning today, and offer them one small act of love that costs you nothing but attention, and it asks for nothing in return. No speech, no explanation, no expectation that it will be noticed and repaid. And I'm going to say it one more time. Expectation is pre-planned resentment. Get that in there. Choose one person to do something beautiful for. Just a quiet demonstration that you see them as part of the same living field that you yourself belong to. That's all you have to do this week. And it's extra credit if you choose someone with whom you struggle to maintain harmony. Just one act of love. One. Without conditions and no scorekeeping. Okay? One simple movement. If you do this, you will notice something shift. Maybe you won't notice it in them, but in that space between you and the world. Yes, the mirage that is this materialistic life, that'll remain visible, but the story that you used to tell about it will begin to thin, even if only just a little bit. And next week when we gather again, we will take that practice one step further. We will answer the one remaining question. What is the grand reveal? Until then, keep breathing, keep blinking, and keep being grateful for both. Take some time each day to notice what is already perfect outside the window of your eyes, and live as love one quiet act at a time. Amen.